Before you toss that food out, wait. Hello YouTubers, Alaska Prepper here. Ladies and gentlemen, I am doing this video as a segue to my last video, which was a short video showing those of you that may be beginning canners to can ground beef, because it is the easiest meat, in my opinion, to pressure can, and it will last you a long time. I wanted to go over this video, which is not going to get very many views because it's kind of a dry video, but very important, especially for those of you that maybe don't have the confidence to put away food long term, especially those foods that you processed yourself. Let me tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, the sites that I'm going off of here are pretty much USDA sites. I'm going to leave the link to these 3 sites in a pinned comment under this video so that you can revisit it and read for yourselves, because I'm going to skim through it, but I'm going to try to cover the parts that are the most important, that will give you the confidence that you need and understanding that you need to know that food is good past its best buy date, ladies and gentlemen. You just have to know how to store it, and if you pressure can it yourself, just make sure that you do it the right way. There's nothing to it. Here it says, before you toss out your food, ladies and gentlemen, check it out. It's happened to all of us. You're looking for something in the freezer or pantry and discover food that has been forgotten. I just took out a piece of steak out of my freezer yesterday that I'm rotating out, that I had frozen, and I properly froze it. And there is a video here. Take a look at the upper right hand corner where you can go and check how I froze the steak. I actually just took these, I think they're New York strips. I took them out yesterday and we had them during our Easter dinner, and it was still good. You just have to know how to do it right, ladies and gentlemen, and make sure that the temperature control apparatus that you're using, be it a freezer or even be it a room that you have your room temperature foods stored in, keeps a good temperature. Food poisoning bacteria does not grow in the freezer, so no matter how long a food is frozen, it is safe to eat. Foods that have been in the freezer for months may be dry or may not taste very good, but they will be safe to eat, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, you have to make sure that you prepare them properly, get them up to temperature. So if you find a package of ground beef that has been in a freezer for more than a few months, don't throw it out. Use it to make chili or tacos, which is a great use for ground beef in that case, because all of the flavors that chilies and tacos have really cover up any off flavor that the meat may have. Now, I'm not talking about every day, ladies and gentlemen. Don't let your meat sit in the freezer for 2 years like I do, all right? Because my taste buds don't care. They'll eat anything, right? But go ahead and rotate through that stuff as well. It just happens to be that I rotate through my meat in the freezer. However, I have a very big freezer that has a lot of frozen meat. Most shelf-stable foods are safe indefinitely. Ladies and gentlemen, I have to read that again so that you understand. This is coming from the USDA. I know it's a government-appointed organization, but still, they do have people that work there that know what they're talking about, that are food experts. What about the food in your pantry? Most shelf-stable foods are safe indefinitely. In fact, canned goods will last for years, as long as the can itself is in good condition and it has not been compromised, i.e. no rust, no dents or swelling. Packaged foods like cereal, pasta, cookies will be safe well past their best buy date, although they may eventually become stale or develop an off flavor. What I recommend for those types of food like cereals and dried foods, if you're going to keep them for long term, of course, package them correctly or repackage them correctly by using Mylar, oxygen absorbers, and if you can, a food saver as well, to get as much air out of there as you can. You'll know when you open the package if the food has lost quality. Many dates on foods refer to quality, not safety. Let me say that again. Many dates on foods refer to quality, best buy date, not expiration date. Right? They refer to quality, not safety. And to give you a little bit of history, ladies and gentlemen, on who invented canning, where did this come up? Well, Napoleon, he was very instrumental in the development of canning. And here it says, Napoleon is considered the father of canning. He offered 12,000 French francs to anyone who could find a way to prevent military food supplies from spoiling. And for those of you that don't understand, how is it that pressure canning foods keeps it shelf stable for a long time? Let me give you my little tidbit to see if it matches up with what this says. And I haven't read this in full yet. What I believe is that as long as you pressure can to a certain temperature and to a certain pressure for a certain amount of time, it's going to pretty much eliminate all of the bacteria inside of that container. And then as long as you keep that pressure canned, whatever it is that you may have pressure canned, in a temperature controlled room where it doesn't get too hot and it doesn't really get a lot of sunlight, or if any at all, then it's going to pretty much last you indefinitely, as long as the container in which you pressure canned it does not get banged around, does not lose its seal or anything like that, does not get compromised, right? So here it says canning is a way to store food for long periods of time. It is a method of preserving where food is placed in an airtight vacuum sealed container and heat processed at 250 degrees Fahrenheit or 121 degrees Celsius. This destroys microorganisms and inactivates enzymes. As the food cools, a vacuum seal is formed that prevents any new bacteria from getting in. Since the food in the container is commercially sterile, it does not spoil. Once the container is open, however, bacteria can enter and begin growing in the food. Any unused portion must then be refrigerated in clean containers. I want to make sure that you don't get scared by the word commercially sterile. Ladies and gentlemen, when you pressure can at home, you're doing the exact same thing that they do at a big factory that does it in mass. You're just doing it at a small level or a micro level, right? Your pressure canning is just as good, probably better than what it's done in a commercial facility. And this is what you've been waiting for here. Will commercially canned foods last forever? And again, when this says commercially, consider the foods that you pressure can just as good as any commercially canned foods. In my opinion, it's a lot better. Commercial canning is done under tightly controlled conditions, careful sanitation, and the necessary time and temperature under pressure. But there is still limits to how long it will preserve food. There are several factors that limit the shelf life of canned foods. First, cans rust over time. So these are the things that you check on your canned foods that you purchased commercially from the supermarket or wherever. So if you have cans that have rust on them and they don't have their seal, probably not good to eat, ladies and gentlemen. Shipping accidents that encourage dents, especially if you have a dent on the seal of a can. That's usually a sign that the vacuum seal or that the seal in it has been broken. Where cans fall and dent or are crushed also cause container problems. Then there's can corrosion in all foods, but especially in high acid foods like canned tomatoes. Natural chemicals in the food continually react with the container. Over several years, this can cause taste and texture changes and eventually lower the nutritional value of the food. So ladies and gentlemen, one of the first rules that you should have whenever you have a full pantry, a pantry that it is packed up so that you can have long-term food, meaning at least a year of sustenance is there, is make sure that you rotate your foods and buy what you eat. But more importantly, eat what you buy. All right, rotate that out. And it says here, high temperatures over 100 degrees Fahrenheit are harmful to canned goods. In my opinion, and I've read this from the USDA before, I'm not sure if it says it here or not, but in my opinion, keeping your temperatures between 50 to 55 degrees Fahrenheit, no more than 70 degrees Fahrenheit, is optimal for longevity of that food. You don't want to take a case of black beans and store it outside under your crawl space. You may be thinking, oh, when you store there, you may be thinking, oh, wow, it's middle of July and it's only 55 degrees here. Well, what temperature will it be in the middle of December, ladies and gentlemen, right? That's what they mean here. Same thing with heat. You may store some, a case of black beans in your shed, in the middle of spring, and you may say, oh, wow, it's, nice and 60 degrees in here. But what temperature will it be in the summer? Will it be 120 degrees inside that shed? All right, that's what they mean, no extreme temperatures. And to finish it off, ladies and gentlemen, I just wanted to go over ground beef, all right, because that's the video that I just did not too long ago. Ground beef is safe indefinitely if kept frozen, okay? But it is best if used within 4 months. Refrigerate or freeze ground beef as soon as possible after purchase. This preserves freshness and slows the growth of bacteria. It can be refrigerated or frozen in its original packaging if the meat will be used soon. Now, if you're going to go ahead and store that meat for long term in your freezer, go ahead and do what you just saw me do here in this short clip that I put up here a few minutes ago. It works great, okay? Now, for the pressure canned ground beef. Pressure canned beef and pressure canned meats and things, ladies and gentlemen, according to the USDA, will last indefinitely. Just make sure that you store them in a temperature controlled room. I try to keep any sunlight out of that room as much as I can, right? No sunlight in that room. Keep it out. Make sure that your temperature is controlled. That way it won't take a chance of either freezing or getting above 100 degrees. As far as I'm concerned, anything above 80 degrees is really pushing it. So I always maintain an eye in my pantry to make sure that it doesn't get above 70 degrees. All right, ladies and gentlemen, you have no excuses. All right, get rid of that fear of pressure canning. Get rid of the fear of putting food up for long term. Go out there and stock it up because we are going to need our preps. Now, let me leave you with one last tidbit of advice. This is what I do to check a jar that I've pressure canned whenever I'm going to use it later on in the future. I've got an example here. It's not a pressure canned meat. It's actually a dry can product that I did with my freeze dryer, and then I used my food saver in order to dry can it. But this is just an example of what I do. So isn't this pretty? This is shredded cheddar cheese, right? And I did this just this month, all right, April of 2022. And this right here is the equivalent of about 1 1/4 pound of fresh cheese right here. Okay, whenever I freeze dry some cheese, I usually get the 5-pound packages, and it makes 4 of these jars whenever I freeze dry them. All right, but anyways, what I do, ladies and gentlemen, let's make believe this is chicken. All right, let me go ahead and take some chicken out of the pantry. All right, I'm telling Miss Alaska Prepper that we're gonna have some chicken today. Maybe some blackened chicken, you know, with some Hispanic rice or some Dominican rice, something like that. Sounds good, right? So I take it out. First thing I do is I look at it. Does it look like chicken? Is there anything growing in it? Is there any colors in it that it shouldn't be? Is there any purple or green or black in there somewhere that shouldn't be there? No, it looks great. Okay, good. Now, let's take a look at my seal. Now, I have this lid on because this was dry canned, all right? But normally, whenever you put away your pressure can chicken or anything, usually you are told that you don't want to leave the lid on. And the reason is because if you leave the lid on tight and you lose your seal, you won't find out. And if you don't, you know, if you come and get this and you don't know that it's lost its seal, you may get sick, all right? I usually, and you've seen it in my pantry before, maybe I'll do an updated pantry video here in the future, but you've seen it in my pantry before. People always ask me, whenever I put like my meats away in my pantry that I pressure can myself, I usually put the lid on like this. I usually leave it like that, really loose. And the only reason I do that, ladies and gentlemen, is just because it takes up so much more room to have all of these rings. You know, to have all these rings somewhere. I've already got a couple of bags that are just full of these. So I usually leave them on, just, you know, on nice and loose. That way if a seal does break, I know about it, okay? So when you get it, you know that it still has this seal, right? I'm not going to pull on this too hard because this was vacuum sealed with a vacuum saver, all right, with a food saver, all right? But it still has its seal. Now, once you open the jar, once you take that lid off, what you're going to do is you're going to look inside of it. Does it look the way it's supposed to look? Okay, it looks the way it's supposed to look. Great. You just pass that test. Smell it. Does it smell the way that it's supposed to smell? In every single instance that I've opened a jar of meat or anything that I've pressure canned myself, it's always smelled the way it's supposed to smell. And you should be able to know that because you're the one that pressure canned it, right? So if it smells like chicken, you know, if it's supposed to smell like chicken, you should remember, yeah, this is what it's supposed to smell like. It smells fine. And then, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last thing I do. I don't just dig in there and taste it. what I do is I make sure that whatever product it is that I'm using, that I pressure canned, that I take it, and when I cook it really well, right? I heat it up really well. That way, if there's any chance of any bacteria being in there, it'll be killed off, right? Do your research, ladies and gentlemen. If you're just starting out, go ahead and purchase the Ball Book of Canning. It's a great guide, especially for beginners. It's in my Amazon storefront, so it's easy for you to find. And I believe that they came out with a new edition last year, I think it was, because I think we did some giveaways on Ball Book of Pressure Canning, the new edition they came out with. So go get one of those. They're not very expensive. I think like 21 bucks or something like that. And check that out. It has recipes, and it pretty much tells you at what elevations you need to be for certain pressures, you know, for either 5 pounds of pressure, 10 pounds of pressure, 15 pounds of pressure. It tells you how long you have to process it for, pressure can it for, depending on what size jars you're using. There's a lot of stuff to know, but the things that you need to know are very simple and very understandable. It doesn't take a rocket science. Trust me. If I can do it, then you can do it as well, right? So get to doing it right now, ladies and gentlemen. This is the time for you to get to doing this if you haven't done it yet. And just imagine what a barterable skill that would be. Our forefathers, our ancestors, whatever you want to call it, our grandparents, great-grandparents, whatever you want to put in the middle there, in the blank. They did this all the time, and they did this for survival. Because back in the day, back in the early 1900s, most people in America were farmers, right? And they knew that they had to have a stockpile of food at all times, just in case they had a failed harvest. And those are the times, ladies and gentlemen, that we are going to be going into in this era, I feel. Having said that, thank you very much for joining in. I really hope you got something out of this. Remember to be good to each other. When good people do good things happen. Remember to reach one, teach one, and repeat. If we all did this, the world would be a better place, and you know that it will be a better place. Many blessings to all of you and your families. I'm Alaska Prepper. I'm out. Ladies and gentlemen, I understand that not everyone is in the part of their preparedness plan where they should be storing long-term freeze-dried food. But if you are, take a look at Nutrient Survival. I stand behind this food because it is the most nutrient-dense food in the market. It tastes great. They have outstanding customer service, and the company is run by great people that I call my friends. You're not going to find a more nutrient-dense food that tastes good and is reasonably priced when compared to other major brands. I wouldn't stand behind Nutrient Survival if I didn't personally use it and love it. So feed your freedom with Nutrient Survival.